What is up, investors? Welcome back to another episode of Everything Crypto, where we talk about everything related to the crypto markets, including the latest and most important news, deep dives on projects we see as having huge potential in the future, as well as technical analysis on all coins featured on the channel. Now, as always, please remember that nothing on this channel is financial advice, but rather my own thoughts, opinions, and research that I have compiled and broken down into a more digestible format for you, the viewer. So all you got to do is sit back, relax, grab that morning cup of coffee, and enjoy the content. And on that note, if you guys do enjoy the content, please consider supporting myself and the channel by hitting that sub and like button, by showing some love to the Twitter page. And for those of you that have been with the channel for a while, you know that the number one rule here is to be absolutely transparent with no additional cost associated. We do not have any paywalls for our transparency, but we just believe that this should come with the channel. And on that note, in the spirit of this rule, we will be launching our Telegram channel at some point this week. This will just be another way for the community to keep up to date on all of the new videos, all of my tweets. I am just working out the kinks on it right now, but we are planning to launch it sometime early next week. So with that out of the way, we are going to get right into today's Cronos content. And today, what we are going to be doing is shedding some light on Web 3.0 and why I think that this is the next generation of the internet that Cronos is set to dominate, okay? But first, we really need to understand what exactly is Web 3.0, as right now it is a very broad term that I think is very overused, and I don't really think that society as a whole has a unified agreement on what Web 3.0 means. So I'm going to try my best in this video to really break down what I think Web 3.0 entails and why Cronos is set to take over this space. However, before we can get into Web 3, I think it is very important to understand what defined Web 1.0 and 2.0 and why Web 3.0 is necessary to address some of the key issues that did arise from these first two iterations of the web. So for starters here, you can see that some people define Web 3.0 as decentralization. Some say it is composability or interoperability. I happen to think it is a combination of all three and more. However, because there is not really a clear definition of Web 3.0 right now, some people do happen to think that it is just a buzzword that is used to pump prices of projects with no real-world use, and some people think it is the next thing after what high bandwidth internet has brought to the scene. So basically, Web 1.0 was when computers were not widely adopted. Even using a computer without the internet was extremely challenging for the average person. And then the internet was invented on top of this. And in order to really use this new technology, you actually had to have an immense amount of technical knowledge in this space. So as a result, the average user was really only browsing the static content pages by navigating it through a low bandwidth connection, hence the read-only nature of Web 1.0. Now, the unique thing about Web 1.0 that I think Web 2.0 really got wrong was that there were no owners of protocols. There were only contributors and consumers of information with no permissions from any institutions whatsoever, meaning that it was accessible to everybody and brought by open source community effort. Now we enter Web 2.0, where we did see more technological advances. However, we did sort of see corporate greed actually completely spoil Web 2.0, in my opinion. So the viability of Web 1.0 was questionable when it came to utilizing its full potential, but Web 2.0 started to emerge with a trade-off. So the read-only nature of Web 1.0 had been transformed into bringing read and write functionalities by driving the barrier to entry down for the average user. However, in order to do this, it did require some sort of a necessary evil, and this necessary evil was enormous resources and a tremendous amount of profitability potential. And this is why platforms like YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, and Amazon emerged, where read and write functions were defined by their technical meaning. So an output, for example, myself posting this YouTube video and you watching it, that is an example of an output. And this is a reading function that your computer performs by reading data from from the YouTube database with its processor. And then the input function is actually uploading a video. So this is a writing function in which my processor instills my content into YouTube's database. Now, this experience started off phenomenal, but the problem that began to emerge is when platforms allowed people to share their content with the rest of users became natural monopolies, and inherently they have no competition because of the network effect they possess. And this is absolutely correct, right? There is only one YouTube, only one Twitter, only one Facebook, and only one Amazon, okay? There have been other platforms like Vimeo that have and Rumble who are trying to step on YouTube's turf, but let's be real, guys. YouTube is an absolute monopoly when it does come to this sort of streaming content. Twitter, there is no other platform like Twitter that allows people to really just get all their thoughts out there in, a certain amount of characters. Facebook and Amazon, I mean, enough said here, guys. These really are just monopoly companies because they did happen to gain majority of user traction when they were released, and it just has been a snowball effect in which it's been really, really difficult for anybody to actually come up and outperform these giants. So when the barrier to entry is driven to the levels that an average user contributes to the platforms efficiently, human creativity is absolutely unlocked. And this is the beauty of Web 2.0, despite the fact that it really is controlled by a couple of greedy corporations. So the companies that own these platforms have all the privileges regarding what will happen to their users' accounts and content, making them the arbitrators of who does what on a global scale. So the centralization of these platforms, and not only the centralization, but the concentration of this centralization is a huge, huge problem, right? And what I mean by this concentration of centralization is the fact that there are 7 billion people on this planet. There are about 3.3 billion people using Facebook, and really only a handful of people dictate what is and is not allowed on these platforms. And Mark Zuckerberg himself, talking specifically about Facebook, I mean, this guy owns upwards of 12% of the total company, and he pretty much does have the sole individual voting rights based on the way that the share structure is actually orchestrated. So now you're talking about one person having a say in what 3.3 billion people can put on this platform. And this is how some of these platforms actually become stronger than nations in terms of exerting their beliefs and opinions and censoring those that they do not agree with on a global scale, whenever and wherever they choose. So, as you can see, there was a lot of changes with Web 2.0. However, the unfortunate truth is that to have all of this technology advancement, we needed major capital and profitability potential, and this led to just a few big players with that capital and profitability to really just dominate and centralize this whole space. And this is where Web 3.0 comes into play. So, Web 1.0, we were looking at a read-only version of the web. Web 2.0, we started to get into a read and write version of the web. And now with Web 3.0, we are looking at full decentralization as a read, write, and own version of the web, okay? So there is no strict definition of Web 3.0 that everybody can consider, the widespread narrative right now, but there is one sort of agreement that everyone who has faith in Web 3 does want to build out together, and it is that Web 3 should be owned by its users and not by corporations. And here is a tweet from Chris Marzalek, the CEO of Crypto.com. He says, "We are a community building the future of the internet. Web 3, powered by cryptocurrency. Web 3 will be more fair and equitable, owned by the builders, creators, and users." That means you. So instead of defining what Web 3.0 is exactly, what we're going to do is look at the currently built components of Web 3.0 and their varieties that correspond with the Cronos chain ecosystem. And there are three key aspects of Cronos that we are going to discuss in relation to Web 3. Now, the first one being the smart contract platform, which is basically a network for communication. And if you think about that, it is no different than phone lines, TV cables, the internet, and blockchains. So on Web 2.0, companies existed on the Open Internet Protocol, otherwise known as DNS, but their protocol was an application within a closed database owned by them and stored in their servers, completely private. The blockchain technology solves this by a transparent database structure secured with cryptography. Now, Cronos is a smart contract platform powered by blockchain tech and the Ethereum virtual machine, allowing Web 3.0 participants to build on top of its decentralized network freely. So the network users can own a piece of the network by owning its token CRO, exposing them to the upside of the overall network feasibility for these decentralized applications. In much simpler terms, this is what we've talked about many times on the channel. If you believe the Cronos chain is going to blow up in terms of total value locked the way that I do, you actually want to own a piece of this network by owning CRO. Sorry guys, nobody wants to call me all day, but then as soon as I start recording, boom, I am the most popular person in the area. So anyways, continuing on, decentralizing the network of these applications, it shifts the control to the collective users as opposed to a Web 2.0 company where it's really just a small select people of executives who impose their wills on billions of users who use their platforms, as we did discuss above with that Mark Zuckerberg example with Facebook. Now, the second big aspect of the Cronos chain in relation to Web 3 is the Crypto.com DeFi wallet. So on Web 2.0, identities in the forms of accounts are fragile, rusty, and do not have influence, as each application requires a new identity and a new account, where your information is also prone to third-party risk to the security of the used app. We have seen it before, hacks happening on the social media platforms, people's information being stolen through phishing links. It happens all the time, unfortunately. And this is where the Crypto.com DeFi wallet plays a big role in actually giving users private keys and public keys, allowing you to operate on the realm of the interoperable internet. So your private keys is that seed phrase that you are responsible of protecting, okay? Now, here's the one thing about this decentralization that people need to understand is that if we are truly going to become decentralized, guess what? You're not going to be able to rely on a corporation anymore when you forget your password, okay? If you truly want to have ownership of your assets, this does come at the cost of also being responsible with your privacy and your information. So there is a lot of, added learning curve to Web 3.0, and that is why we make these videos about DeFi, about how to be secure, about keeping your seed phrase in multiple places, because there is a learning curve, and in order to become truly decentralized, this does come with the downside that we cannot rely on these corporations anymore. If we forget our information, nobody will be able to just simply send us an email for us to change our password, okay? So this is where it is very important to have your private keys protected, write them down in multiple places, and then your public keys are basically your wallet addresses that will allow you to interact with Web 3.0 and with other people if they are transferring you money. So that is the use of these keys. Now, applications like the Crypto.com DeFi wallet provide users with a simple way to interact with the capabilities of decentralized applications without going through all the technical legwork, and this is one of the biggest bull cases for us on the channel. We have discussed in the past how the Crypto.com app partnered up with the DeFi wallet make it very simple and seamless for people to be exposed to both the centralized exchange side of things as well as the decentralized finance side of things. So it is similar to lowering entry barriers by transforming Web 1.0 to 2.0, but the difference here is that we do not need to sacrifice the internet to these big corporations. The user still gets to keep your keys and your identity, as well as self-custody of your funds when using these third-party wallet apps. And the only thing sacrificed here is that the app creator themselves may anonymously collect the data. So all the data and funds are in the hands of the user by private keys that are held in your custody on Web 3.0. And this is the true power of decentralization. Now, last but not least, let's get into decentralization, but more specifically, decentralized finance. So an unconventional way of employing financial services has been born through Web 3.0. This unique way of holding, transporting, and relocating value is called DeFi. It is a fundamentally groundbreaking way of handling finances, which also introduces the new ways of engaging with value through online networks. And an example would be the most popular Web 3.0 game, Axie Infinity, delivering hundreds of thousands of people an actual way to make a living through tokenomics by the structure of their DeFi mechanism. Most people think that the first killer app will be video games for Web 3.0, and I actually do tend to agree. So we're actually going to be making our next video on a side note about the Cronos metaverse and why I think that is going to be a huge area of growth moving forward for the Cronos chain. So if you guys do want to see a video on the Cronos verse, please let me know in the comments down below and we can break that down more in depth for you. But basically, some of the reasons that they're citing here is that there is already a huge virtual market for video games, and in-game purchases as a revenue model is already the norm in terms of skins, weapons, armors, accessories, digital cards, and more. So the Cronos chain is at the beginning of building its own Web 3.0 gaming system, as they did announce the launch of Cronos Play just at the beginning of the month. And the announcements are coming really back-to-back rapid fire, and that is why we are going to make a video breaking this down more in depth. So another part of Web 3.0 comes the identifier, culture, myth, and community. And this talks about things like NFTs, 3D realities, virtual land that are being built, and these PFP projects. This is a very new and exciting space that many people do not understand. And what people do not understand, they either tend to fear or make fun of. And that is why you see so many people out there, bashing people for paying 300 grand for what they call a JPEG of an ape. And they don't actually understand the meaning behind these NFTs and what they are going to do for people in the metaverse. So to sum this all up, Web 3.0 is the internet owned by individuals and communities, not corporations. It seems that the first efficient community started to emerge through respectable and credible NFT projects. And it will be interesting to observe which unique ways will occur in this new fashion of engaging with strangers on the internet whose shared values and delights are entrenched with financial incentives on top. Now, this article was courtesy of the Chronicle. This is a site that I visit on a weekly basis for my Cronos news, and they are, in fact, this video's sponsor. So I just want to give you guys a quick rundown about what the Chronicle is and why they are so important to my weekly market research. Now, you guys know that Cronos is our favorite project here on the channel. They are always making moves in the market so much that it is almost impossible to keep up with, and that is where I highly value thechronicle.com as the #1 news site for all things Cronos chain. They got a directory of about 100 projects on Cronos with voting and comments, a community calendar of NFT drops and token launches, and tutorials on how to get started with the Cronos ecosystem. They are followed by the Cronos CEO Chris Marzalek on Twitter, and they were actually a part of the first batch of Cronos ecosystem grant recipients. They have just launched a new initiative, Project Collaboration, where they have opened up their website to projects and crypto-focused authors to post their own articles. Think like Medium, but on a Cronos-focused site with all project articles posted in one place. And this is because the Chronicle understands that bringing awareness and eyes on Cronos projects is challenging, so they've made it easy for investors by putting all the best Cronos projects in one place on their site. So go ahead and follow them on Twitter and subscribe to their website to get notified on the latest published articles. If you like Crypto.com and CRO like we do and want to stay up to date on all things Cronos chain, following the Chronicle and using their site will be a great way to go. Exciting things are on the horizon for the Chronicle, so check them out as your one-stop website for all Cronos news you need. Why get info from several sources when you can get everything you need right at the Chronicle? And on that note, I hope you guys did enjoy the content in today's video. I hope it did give you a better idea of what Web 3.0 is and why the Cronos chain is so well positioned to be a huge player in this growing industry. Now, we got a lot of video up the pipeline for this week, including, first of all, discussing Cronos name service, which will be a big part in actually the identities of Web 3.0. We are also going to talk about Cronos Play and the moves they are making to create their own GameFi metaverse. And last but not least, we are going to talk about the NFT projects that we have been scooping up to actually get our place in the Cronos verse. So plenty of stuff that we want to break down this week, as I do think over the next couple of years, this will be a huge area of growth in the crypto market in general. But I really do believe once again that Cronos is very well positioned to be a big player, and that is why we are so bullish on this project. It is truly the most ambitious project in our opinions on this channel that we are invested in, and that is why there is always so much to cover. So I hope you guys did enjoy this video. I'm going to get back to work on the next one for you. Peace out for now.